We have an update on the so-called Bucha massacre. The Western media claims that Russian soldiers were killing these people, executing them, doing horrible types of torture to them before withdrawing from the region. And of course, there was no evidence that Russians did this. As a matter of fact, most of the evidence suggested that it was Ukrainians who did this. They came into the area after Russia withdrew, and they carried out punitive operations against people they perceived as collaborators. These were people who had their hands bound behind their back, and they were killed very recently. When the photos of them started turning up, these were people who were killed after Russia left. Then the New York Times showed satellite images of people dead out on the road. But these are people who were killed in an exchange of fire between Russian and Ukrainian forces. And I have showed you video of Ukraine. Video Ukraine itself provided the public of them shelling Russian positions in Bucha. If they are killing Russians, they are also killing anyone else who's still living in that area, including civilians. And I said in my last video about this that if you were to investigate it, you would find that most of these people who were killed by artillery. And it would have been Ukrainian artillery. And it would have been Ukrainian artillery trying to target Russian troops. And these people would have died as, you know, as they say, collateral damage. And now The Guardian has come out and admit that, yes, most of these people were killed by artillery, not by Russian death squads putting bullets in their head. And this is the article right here. Dozens of Bucha civilians were killed by metal darts, and then they say from Russian artillery. But this is an area Russia held. You cannot shell your own position with artillery. It doesn't make any sense. It had to have been Ukrainian artillery. But let's continue reading. Forensic doctors discover flèches, rarely used in modern warfare, in bodies found in mass graves. Dozens of civilians who died during the Russian occupation of the Ukrainian city of Bucha were killed by tiny metal arrows from shells of a type fired by Russian artillery, forensic doctors have said. Of course, these are Ukrainian forensic doctors. This was not an impartial, objective investigation. It was carried out by Ukraine. They're not going to say that it was Ukrainian artillery that hit them. But if these people were killed in a Russian-held part of Bucha, then it was not Russia shelling these people. It was obviously Ukraine. And there's no evidence available to suggest that Ukraine did this deliberately, but it was Ukraine nonetheless. Now they're acting as if these types of weapons are only used by Russia, but that is an absolute lie. Here is an old article from AFP. Surgeons in Ukraine's rebel Donetsk confirm cluster bomb usage. This is a picture right here. Look at that. Let's go back to this other one. Look at that. That is the exact same type of dart. A pro-Russian separatist fighter shows a dart from a flèche shell on October 21st, 2014 in Donetsk, Ukraine. Surgeons in East Ukraine's rebel hub of Donetsk, where dozens of civilians have died in recent weeks, confirmed on Tuesday that some patients were victims of cluster bombs, as alleged by Human Rights Watch. Cluster bombs were munitions that contain dozens or even hundreds of smaller explosives that are carried by bombs or rockets and spread indiscriminately over a wide area, often the size of a football field. The Human Rights Watch report said, these arms are not for destroying buildings. They are uniquely for killing people. The surgeon working in the Kalinin hospital said, refusing to give his name. The little darts cause grave injuries, he said. There have been cases when we found up to 20 or 30 of them in one person. Most of the world has signed a treaty banning cluster bombs, but not Ukraine. So there you go. That was from 2014. That was Ukraine firing flèche rounds at their own people in Donbas. And in 2022, while Russia held Bucha, Ukraine was shelling Bucha with flèche rounds. It's so obvious. As a matter of fact, even the most ill-informed person has to ask themselves, if the Russian troops were there in that area, how could they possibly have shelled themselves with artillery? The whole point of artillery is to shoot thousands of meters away, not straight up into the air and down on your own position, or point blank. If they wanted to kill civilians, why not just use rifles? And this is what the story was from the beginning. This was the false narrative that the Western media was telling people from the very beginning, that Russia went out and killed all of these people, execution style, soldiers with rifles shooting people in the head. And now that a medical examination has concluded that they were actually killed by artillery, they're gonna just say it was Russian artillery, even though it makes absolutely no sense. This is The Guardian blatantly lying to you, blatantly lying about two things: that it was Russian artillery when it obviously couldn't have been, because Russia was in that area. It was obviously Ukrainian artillery. And the other lie, that Russia only uses these weapons, when there are articles from the mainstream Western media from 2014 admitting that Ukraine was using this exact type of munition on its own people in Donetsk.